Hello, citizens! At this point, Star Citizen 4.1 has been out for a week, and players worldwide have had a chance to get their feet wet in one of the most highly anticipated .x patches in recent memory. Though maybe not quite as profound as the launch of 4.0, 4.1 has brought with it an entirely new series and subset of contract lines that are hopefully an indicator of things to come. And with it, of course, a new set of concerns about who this game is being tailored to and who is being left behind. In this video, I intend to dissect some of the concerns as well as pose some alternative viewpoints while taking into consideration the developmental direction of Star Citizen, both in 2025 and in years to come. I'll be going into the following: Star Citizen's troubled past, CIG's promises of 2025 and whether or not I believe they're following through, the overall direction of the game from my viewpoint, and I'll also be offering up an alternative way that I believe they should be doing things to better tend to the needs and wants of the backers when it comes to stability and bug fixes. Welcome back to Forge Core Gaming. I'm your host Phoenix, and this is my reflection on the state of the game 1 week into Star Citizen 4.1. Before we get started, I'd like to humbly ask that you hit that subscribe button if you enjoy Star Citizen content with a focus on quality. We recently took a small hit to momentum as someone thought it would be a fun idea to falsely claim that I stole their video scripts, which is hilarious to me when you consider the fact that I hardly ever watch other creators in this space, and I can assure you I spend at least 3 to 5 hours carefully writing out each script by myself with zero contributions from anyone else. As such, it would really mean a lot if you hit that subscribe button and help the channel get back on pace. But without further ado, let's get into it. Star Citizen's history is riddled with turmoil and controversy. From its initial conception, Star Citizen garnered the attention of gamers worldwide, largely in part due to its grandiose promise of a go anywhere and do anything you want kind of universe. The fact that it was to be funded, not by large developmental studios, but rather a Kickstarter campaign instead, only helped affix the eyes of both naysayers and avid followers praying for the day that CIG's bold dreams will become a reality. And I'm sure it's no secret to anyone watching this video, but the path to where we are now has been anything but smooth sailing. Now, I'm not an original backer. My money first entered the CIG ecosystem back in 2017, shortly after I began grad school. The game wasn't in a terribly playable state at that point, so my interest in Star Citizen quickly waned. And it wasn't until early 2024 when I finally decided to pick the sticks back up and give it another go. But even though I wasn't an active and obsessed patron of the Star Citizen universe for the majority of its development, it has always been a project I would check back in on ever since I first heard about it back in 2012. So I was always kinda aware of the allegations of it being a scam, or how it misappropriated funds, or how the studio directors and higher-ups were living in the dream of a blue sky phase, and how the scope of the project has changed so vastly that the original idea of the game only exists as a shadow of what we have today. There was never any shortage of negative press surrounding the project, and part of me always halfway expected to stumble upon the inevitable article stating that Star Citizen had gone belly up, and that all the doubters were, at least this time, correct. Fast forward to 2024, with 4.0 and server meshing being on the cusp of its promised release date, and the underlying implication that all of the game's problems would be quote-unquote fixed with the launch of server meshing. Couple that with the rather impressive gameplay demo of Squadron 42 at 2024's SitCon, which then rolled into a pretty objectively botched launch of the aforementioned 4.0. Plus, the letter of the chairman, Chris Roberts, vowing that 2025 would be the year of bug fixes, stability, and content. We find ourselves here, 3 months into 2025, wondering whether or not CIG is going to make good on their promise. All of that preamble in the previous section was done with a bit of a purpose. It was to remind the viewers of just how far the game has come. Even if we look back just 1 year to patch 3.22, the state of the game, in my opinion, is better by leaps and bounds. I remember shortly after coming back to the game, I was regretting doing so because of the amount of bugs that I encountered that made the experience miserable at best. Now, I'm no stranger to playing games in their developmental stages. Just to give you a gauge on how much of a masochist I am, I played Ark Survival Evolved with a total of 4,000 logged hours in just a few years, and this was before it came to full release. I've done 3 complete playthroughs of Ark, and I even drank the Kool-Aid again by purchasing Ark Survival Ascended when it came out in October of 2023. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. But Star Citizen, to be frank, impressed me with how unstable it was when I came back in 2024. I could hardly go 30 minutes without a crash, which, I'll admit, my PC at the time was partly to blame. But even when it wasn't breaking, it really didn't feel like there was much depth to it. Now I know, I'm spoiled, and before you rag on me for not having endured 3.18, save it. Your experience with 3.18 doesn't negate the fact that as little as 1 year ago, this game kinda sucked. There wasn't anything to do. All you did was make money, to buy ships, to make money, to buy ships, the end. It felt like one of those NFT games where nobody played it to have fun, they only played it to get other people to play it. And sure, I'll admit, there were halfway cool moments, and I don't think I'll ever get over the scale of this game or the ships, but it was missing curated experiences, story, and any reason why I should give a dang about anything happening in the Star Citizen universe. Fast forward to today, though I don't think CIG has fully addressed those 3 things, it certainly has done so partially. For the first time since I've started playing Star Citizen, I'm actually reading the contracts and quest lines. I'm actually paying attention to what's going on. I even appreciate the small touches on the loading screen that provide in-universe news and lore. Is it complete? Is it sufficient? Is it perfect? Hardly, but CIG is definitely taking steps in the right direction. And part of the problem with my critique of the story and experience thus far is that we're experiencing everything along a very broad time horizon. In other words, we have to wait a full month before we get the next chapter of the story. I suspect this will change as they get into a good pace with content production, and the experience will likely feel more dense and story-driven after the launch of 1.0, whenever that is. With that said, it's refreshing to have something new to do each month. Whether it's fighting off the frontier fighters in Pyro, resupplying the headhunters in CFP, or coordinating with org members and strangers to fire up a laser to go mining in order to earn favors with Wakolo. There's something new to do every few weeks, and that feels awesome. And sure, I'll concede to this. Prior to 4.1, the new content was really just reskinned old stuff, but okay, at least it was attached to stories and gave us reasons to coordinate with other players. Now, if we look at stability, it would be prudent of us to remember that the root of the problem is concurrency in the PTU. Because yes, we're coming out of a week-long degraded game state, but the devs have openly stated that the problems that keep arising stem from the fact that newly implemented systems break at scale. And if they can't test at scale, that's going to continue to happen. With that said, even with the servers and shards in a degraded state, the game is pretty stable. Are there problems? Yep. Do the hangars still not want to open sometimes? Absolutely. I waited in line for 5 minutes to leave my hangar the other day, not because there was a queue, but because ATC just left me on red. Do we fall through the planet sometimes? You bet we do. There are still dozens of problems, bugs, and glitches, most of which seasoned players have learned to live with. That doesn't excuse any of them, by the way. It's just a statement of fact. For example, if you run into an elevator without first verifying the floor is there, you're either brand new to the game, or you're just downright brazen. But think back a few patches. How many people were stranded on planets with no way to call a ship? I know I lived out of Everest Harbor for longer than I care to admit, but now, cities are pretty safe places to go. Albeit that fact should be partly credited to the fact that new patches and entity wipes come every 30 days, but what MMO doesn't have to do maintenance on their game? With that said, I've never seen Star Citizen in a more playable state, even with the degraded servers. I put in probably 20 hours of playtime since the launch of 4.1, with really only one game-breaking bug, in which I lost about 0.75 SCU of looted gear from one of the new POIs. All this is to say that signs are pointing north. CIG appears to be making good on their promise. And though some of the more apparent bugs and stability issues are still here, they're working on it. And complex problems take time. I've seen a lot of chatter in the forums about how CIG seems to be forcing PvP into every event, and that the events and contracts in 4.1, though they appear to be PvE oriented, are being effectively ruined by murder hobos and griefers. I'm referencing what other players are saying here, by the way. These are not my words. Now, I've also seen on the forums that the problem is much worse on American servers. I'm not sure how true that is, but I wouldn't doubt it. I blame their parents. But I digress. On this topic, I have a tendency to disagree with the sentiment that the event is being ruined by PvP. And let me clarify this. I almost never seek out PvP. That isn't my why behind what motivates me to play the game. In fact, I ran into several players on both the laser platforms and ground POIs that I just walked on by once I found out they weren't there to fight me. After all, this isn't Pyro. I don't want a crime stat, and I have zero interest in interrupting someone else while they're just trying to get some of the new loot. It just isn't my style. With that said, the first time I visited one of the new POIs on Aberdeen, my crew and I were swiftly met by players who wanted to shoot first and ask questions later. But that was just a few hours after the patch came through, and of course there are going to be players from all walks of Star Citizen life present at the new POIs. But they do eventually go away. In fact, in as little as 24 hours after the event, I was able to visit 2 of the new sites without any harassment from other people. And I did it again the day after that as well. Albeit we did find traces of PvP enthusiasts everywhere we looked by way of size 3 NDBs on nearly every ship on the ground, which is a type of ship gun that you can only get from the PvP contested zones in Pyro. I'm not saying they were 100% PvPers, but those do seem a lot like breadcrumbs. Anyways, I get where the frustration comes from. When the new event happens entirely in just a handful of POIs, the odds of you encountering murder hobos during peak gameplay hours are pretty high. But keep in mind, they'll lose interest just as soon as the next event comes around. Now when it comes to the direction of the game, I kinda hinted at this before, but we need to consider the idea that now is just a weird time in the development timeline. Even with the new additions, there still isn't a ton of stuff to do out there. There is some variety, but PvPers are gonna PvP. And since the player bounty system isn't functioning, and a player-to-player reputation system isn't in the game yet, there really isn't any recourse. But those things are coming, they're on the way, allegedly. And overall, I think the player base, on average, tends towards being good rather than purposeless killers. As the late great MLK once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So once those systems are in place, the launch of new events like this will likely be very different, as the do-gooders and vigilantes out there will likely be standing by, waiting to hunt down criminal elements and gangs of unruly players. So hold on to hope, fellow citizens. Though I don't believe your frustrations will be eliminated, I do believe that the proper tools to fight back will be there before we know it. Until then, it's important to remember, this is a game, and if you become frustrated, it's okay to walk away for a bit. With that said, however, the direction of the game seems to be in the direction of its original intention. Go anywhere you want and do anything you want. Just be prepared to deal with the consequences. I only say this with the roadmap in mind, not with the state of the game as it currently stands. Keep in mind, this section of the video is not meant to be comprehensive. I could probably write a short novel detailing the errors CIG has made with the game, at least from a PR perspective. I'm no developmental specialist. Instead, this section is really just to go over how I propose one particular thing could be done to mitigate some of the glaring issues that still arise patch after patch. And that recommendation of which is incentivize concurrency on the PTU servers. I only say this because the devs themselves have stated concurrency during testing, or lack thereof, is the primary reason why patches break when released to live. And well, if that's the case, then give players a reason to join the PTU. And by reason, I mean more than just seeing what will inevitably come anyways, or getting early access to tested items. That's just kinda dumb. You see, people don't like trading their time for nothing. That's a big reason why I don't spend much time in the PTU. We're already paying money to be alpha testers in a persistent environment. Give something back to the community to be PTU testers. It doesn't have to be something crazy like a ship or anything, but give players a livery for one of their ships during each PTU cycle if they spend X amount of hours playing. Better yet, give their account a token so they could choose which livery they wanted, with some exclusive and high-tier liveries being off limits. Or give players an account-bound set of armor after reaching Y hours of playing the PTU. The majority of money CIG makes doesn't come from liveries and armor anyways, so it wouldn't be a huge hit to their bottom line. Heck, if they want to go crazy, once someone plays 1,000 hours of the PTU, give them an account-bound ship, much like they do for the referral program. Think about it. 1,000 hours is a lot of test time. And if we put the average hourly rate at $20, that's like $20,000 of value that they are getting from their player base. They could even create a reward tier system that persists from PTU to PTU. Do they lose money on the bottom line? Maybe. But they also save money from not having to build something a second or a third time in the live environment. Also imagine how revenue could improve if patch after patch came out with little to no bugs. What if their solutions were able to be stress tested prior to going live? What would happen if all of a sudden creators and players were giving raving reviews rather than scathing ones? I know a lot of my friends who play Star Citizen find it very difficult to recommend the game to their friends and family. Why would they want their friends to buy into something that only works 70% of the time? But if the script was flipped and tens of thousands of players were forcing patches to come out pristine month after month in exchange for some kind of account-bound items, then I think players would be far more comfortable bringing their friends and family into it. And I think the player base wouldn't angrily laugh to themselves whenever they saw a Star Citizen ad claiming the game was quote-unquote playable now. Imagine how many of the old players would re-download the game if they hopped onto Reddit and saw nothing but good news. Fact is, it's an established business precedent for a company to give something in order to receive more. Goodwill towards your target audience is a force multiplier when it comes to public relations. And customers who feel like they've been slighted or taken advantage of rarely come back for seconds. So my recommendation to CIG, if by some odd stroke of luck this message can get to them, is rather than slapping a band-aid on the problem by communicating why things haven't been going according to plan, utilize your resources as leverage to attack the problem where it begins, with ample testing hours and concurrency during the developmental stages. Alright, this video is getting a little bit long, so I think this is a good stopping point. Let me know what you think of the game in its current state, regardless of whenever you're watching this video. I'd love to hear from you. Also, please remember to leave a like and subscribe if you appreciated the video. Our org is always looking for more active and regular players, so feel free to drop an application and join the Discord using the links in the description. As always, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the verse.